Oh yeah, this is my
You're
jam.
listening to Word Talk with Click, Scribble, and Scrawl, the Stetit cousins, where even in the script notes that you'll never see, we use the serial comma. Well, let's see. I think we've got questions to start us right off with. I had one myself, but heck with that. I'd rather get someone else's. Mine is too embarrassing.
Ooh, an embarrassing one. No, 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 no. You can't say that and expect us to ignore it. I want the embarrassing one.
Yeah.
Okay. Mine is one of those, I just wrote a thing and it's teeny tiny. It's one of those almost right word things.
Like your penis?
It's, excuse me. Swallowed wrong.
Or no, and I was trans right.
Okay. Yeah, that's what you love when you're doing an audio broadcast.
It's a Katie.
Yeah, this is early in Vlad's career. He's going off and he tells Kragar he's going to see the necromancer, who Kragar at this point doesn't know. And Kragar makes a very typical Kragar crack. Something about, you've got to not hang around with people who use titles instead of names. They just get you into trouble, which is a perfectly reasonable Kragar line, but the word titles isn't exactly what I want there. It's, you know, the necromancer, the sorceress, the blah, blah, blah. What am I looking for there?
Epithet.
What
Yes.
did you say?
You're looking for epithet. I don't know if that's what Kragar would use. When you refer to somebody by something other than their name, it's an epithet. It's like the young man, the old sailor.
Well, that expands the dialogue, but that may be okay because then Kragar says, you know, don't deal with people who use epithets. And Vlad has to say, what the hell is an epithet? And what can it do to me? Or something. This is early in his career.
And I like that because what the hell is, in fact, the other meaning of epithet, and that works very nicely. That's true.
Excellent.
Guys, can we try to keep a nice language here?
Somebody isn't muted.
Jonathan B., do you have your mic on? Because I don't know what's going on here.
Okay, that was my question. Epithet is the answer.
You also have a couple of folks in chat suggesting honorific and moniker.
Oh, honorific.
Honorific is very good in that. Yeah.
Yeah, you now have to decide where the title comes from.
Well, I mean, there's always the question of, I mean, as in a character sense, it's do you call yourself that or do other people call you that?
Right.
Yeah.
But I know the answer to that, and you know, so I anyway.
You know the answer to that, and you're not going to tell us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think you have the opportunity for a rich digression.
Yeah, but this is Vlad, not Parpy. He doesn't believe in digressions.
Yeah.
Much.
What a bum.
Yeah.
Man, a few words.
I've had a really, really good week. I got 500 words written today for the first time, and certainly since the COVID-19 thing, which really put a squish on me. But it's been going much better. Anyway, let's get a question.
So last time we did this, I definitely had somebody on my list that I then forgot about. I have changed quarantine residences 3 times since then, so I don't have my list anymore. If you are the person who I forgot about last time, just let me know in chat and I will jump you up. Otherwise, we are going to start with, I think it was Derek Smith had a question. So go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, Derek. Everybody else, just go ahead and stay muted, thanks. Watch the chat.
Actually, I'm not sure if I had an important question. My question was, what happened with the Stetit cousins versus the Pre-Joycean Fellowship? which I thought was an interesting way to introduce Word Talk.
Oh, wow. Well, is this an appropriate venue to talk about the PJF, guys?
I think probably. The first thing is, what we were thinking about was something that is spun off from Car Talk, which was an old National Public Radio show coming out of Boston, done by, and now I can't remember the guys' real names, but they called themselves Click and Clack, the Tappet Brothers, and they would explain to you what was wrong with your car. If you called in and you told them what your car was doing, and they would basically say, well, it's either this or it's that, and they would make fun of each other and the caller and actually provide useful information on how to fix your car. I was very impressed. I remember Will and I were driving someplace and we turned on Car Talk because that's one of the things that we do on road trips. And a guy called in and said, I don't know what to do. I've got this Jaguar, and I want to drive it to work, and half the time it won't start. And Click and Clack proceeded to practically die laughing. They said, "You bought a Jaguar, and you expect to drive it to work every day?" It was like, no, sweetie, it's a British car. You don't do that. No. You drive that for fun when it wants to go.
Well,
I'll tell you something. Oh, go ahead.
That explains the Stetit cousins, and I love Car Talk. I'm 42, and my parents introduced me to it when I was very young, so that's awesome, and I love the reference. But the Pre-Joycean Fellowship morphing into the Stetit cousins?
Oh, no.
It's totally separate thing.
No, they're completely separate.
Two different organizations.
Yeah,
lovely,
yeah.
because the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood and the Pre-Joycean Fellowship I get. Okay, so now Car Talk versus, or Click and Clack versus Stetit Cousins is a totally separate thing.
Yes.
Yeah. This is just for this broadcast.
Yeah.
I was going to call Car Talk once, except nothing was wrong with my car.
Aww.
I was
They would have
looking
appreciated the irony.
for a period of several weeks. No,
Okay,
just
Andy,
to have
I
want to play a Pokemon game?
Andy, I have Kangaskhan.
Okay, Dobre B and whoever else that was, please turn off your cameras. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a period of a couple of several months in there. Some of you remember the Catmobile. I just had this fantasy of calling up Car Talk and saying, okay, I've got a 1970 Cadillac ambulance, and
Yeah, and that would be great right there, yes.
that would have been so cool, but I had nothing to call them about.
Yeah, the PJF, for those of you who don't know what the PJF is, see, we are nothing if not thieves. If there's one thing we know how to do, the thing that this show and the PJF have in common is that what we did was we stole somebody else's idea, we filed the serial numbers off, and we're passing it off as ours. The Pre-Joycean Fellowship is based on the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, which was a bunch of Victorian painters who looked at the previous painters and said, these guys suck, and here's why they suck. And they set themselves out. They had a manifesto, and they had a magazine, and they had a whole thing. And what we wanted was to be able to talk about combining artistic value and entertainment in the same work. But what we really wanted to do was be able to go out and drink beer and talk about writing. And so that was really why the Pre-Joycean Fellowship was formed. And I kind of suspect that the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood was also kind of like that.
I'm guessing that there was a lot of that. Yeah. Let's get together, throw
I
down a
think you're
few.
being optimistic, but I really love the sentiment.
Well, we are serious about this. The best single sentence explanation for the PJF I've ever heard comes from Chapman King, who said the PJF exists to make fun of the excesses of modern literature while simultaneously mining it for everything of value.
Right.
Yes, I loved that. And that was kind of my question. I know there are so many other important issues going on, but I loved that sentiment, and that's why I'm glad to now have the connection between Click and Clack and the Stetit cousins. So thank you.
You're very
It's all
welcome.
family. It's all family.
Oh, on to the next
Is anybody stuck on a story? dead
Ooh.
silence.
Yeah, I like it. It's kind of ominous.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've gotten a couple. We have a couple.
Yeah, looks like we've got a couple.
Jen, this is on you. Unmute somebody.
Who's next?
I think we're having technical difficulties.
I think we're doing okay so far.
Hello?
John? Hey, John. Welcome to Word Talk.
Just make it full screen. It'll be easier.
Thank
Are
you.
you a writer or an author?
Probably a writer.
Okay. Not that I have the least clue what the difference is. It just seemed like kind of an interesting question to ask.
Oh, I remember reading about it, but I think it was basically dispensing with the idea of author as something to be and focusing on being a writer.
Oh, okay.
The thing
okay.
I've seen about it.
Fair enough.
So I'm working on a play. It's called The Work Suffers. And the idea I had was basically this woman painter is very unhappy in her relationship, but discovers that she's painting much more interestingly than before. And so she just decides to stay with this man whom I'm having an interesting time characterizing through, him being himself. But the story builds to a climax. She gets an exhibition, enjoys success, and then she meets a nice man. And she has a friend she talks to advance the story. And basically, her friend who was the one who realized that...
Just put your mouse on there.
Hi guys, I'm gonna do karate today.
Hey, that's great. Good for you.
Wait.
There we go. Sorry,
Thank
John.
you. No worries. Yes. So at the end, she's met this man whom actually I had a suggestion to have her interacting with him all in pantomime, and then have her go talk to her friend. Oh yeah, I just met this guy, and she says, "So is he worth it?" And I had thought of that as the end of a one-act play, but I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying it seemed like the first of 3 acts. And I don't really know how to dive into, I don't know, what she might do or figure out without being horribly cliche written. Any thoughts?
Right. Yeah, the danger there is getting heavy-handed. The fact that you recognize it is a really good sign that you probably won't. But that does leave you with what do you do instead?
Well, the first thing that occurs to me is it sounds like this bad relationship is essentially a muse figure. So that you're talking about how does a creator cope with a bad muse. I'm not quite sure where this goes. It could be a metaphor for bad writing habits. I mean, bad creativity habits. There are people who come up with really awful ways to get themselves to create art. And a part of me wants to say, well, hey, if it works, it's not awful. It's working.
I'm going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship, zooming through the sky.
Wow.
I kind of like that one. Anyway. Emma, does that suggest anything?
Well.
Another take on it.
Yeah.
Figuring out, okay, it sounds like the main conflict for you is this woman's stuck between her bad relationship, good art, and good relationship, potentially bad art?
Unknown.
Yeah, but the basic conflict is she's got relationship problems and artistic success, and she's afraid that they're connected in such a way that she can never get out of this.
Yeah, which
now,
Oh, sorry, go on.
And if that's really what you're what the central conflict is in the story. It seems to me that she's got to either test that or refuse to test that,
Okay.
and things have to go either right or wrong from there. And if it's the first act of 3-act play, things are going to go wrong from there.
Oh, that makes sense. But then we need some sort of realization, catharsis, synthesis. Okay.
It may also be that she finds herself another relationship, which is also really bad, and she discovers that she can make even a whole different kind of swell art.
Ooh,
Can I,
interesting. I like it.
can I take this in a different direction?
Yeah, go.
You say she's an artist. I think you said visual artist, painter or something,
Yes.
right? What is she painting?
At least to my mind, colorful abstract.
It seems to me the contents of the painting or paintings she's working on either comments on the problem or might provide you a solution for a new direction.
Ooh, that is really cool.
Spend a little thought on just what it is she's painting and why, and see how that bounces off the basic conflict.
What's interesting to me about the setup as described so far is it sounds like the relationship characters, these two, problematic lover and supportive lover, are not actually the main characters. That they're sort of part of the environment that she's functioning within.
Horse is working on the main character.
Yeah. And it makes me think that you need, if you haven't already thought of this, at least 2 more characters, one being essentially a best friend to kind of confide in and to give.
He mentioned a best friend.
Yeah. And essentially an agent, business person, somebody who would also have a take on the situation that would be different than the others.
Cool.
So.
Ooh, that's great. Thank you.
Helpful.
That's all I've got.
Okay.
Did that help at all?
Yes, it did. Oh, yes. This is marvelous, actually. Yes, that especially using the art. Not just as expressionistic art, but as a way to manifest what's going on. I love that.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And we are going to want to see in the play, we're going to want to see the art. So making it part of what happens would be extra cool.
Yeah. Or we don't want to see the art, but we want to hear about it.
Oh, that would also be cool. Yeah. Yeah, see everyone's reaction to it.
Yeah,
never see
have it. Have it up in the just have it hanging off the 4th wall, or else just right in front of the 4th wall.
Right.
Nice.
Hey.
Okay, let's move on to another question.
And thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Go ahead and mute yourself, and then we're going to move to Erica next, who I am now unmuting. Go ahead, Erica.
Actually unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, indeed, Eric. How you doing?
Okay. Hey, we are in another more or less realistic novel from me. It's my quarantine project. It is taking place more or less as we speak, because for some reason I got motivated to put this in the current election season and the primaries and Russian interference and spies and whatnot. And I was having great fun, and I got into one of my usual problems, which is making decisions. Anyway, what has bitten me, and what I'm bringing to the table today for your consideration, is the problem that what was going to be a minor subplot or whatever, has grown into its own fairly large storyline and is now geographically split from the other storyline, is going to be separated from it by COVID and have nasty logistics as a result from that. And I'm having queasy feelings about having to do a bunch of logistics to make this actually like work and stuff. And I know that this is just decision making on my part. And then I thought about it some more. All right, it's elections and stuff, and so pushing this subplot into Washington, D.C. made a whole lot more sense. It was, doing the research about the weirdness of D.C. Well, yeah, let's do that, right? And D.C. is really weird, and that was fun. So, but I still have my primary male and primary female characters sitting in New Hampshire. And yeah, except that she's obligated to her, I'm going to call them sisters, but they're not, who are stuck in Washington, D.C. And
let me interrupt you here, if I may.
Yeah.
Which is, are you basically saying that you think this new shiny thing sounds like more fun than the old shiny thing?
No.
Are you saying it sounds like less fun?
No, I'd say this is not a new shiny thing that is more shiny than the old thing. What I'm saying is that a subplot has grown into being a second major storyline. We're not even a third of the way through this thing yet, probably.
So you had this piece, you had this work, this story, and it was here, and it was going to be perfectly lovely and self-contained, and all the people are there where they're supposed to be, and then suddenly that happened.
It bifurcated, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
So
it's
now
like
you
when a
have this
minor-
object that's shaped like this, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
like when a minor character comes in and suddenly takes over the book.
In many ways, it is a lot like that. Yes, that's exactly how it happened. In
It
fact,
sounds kind of like, actually, it's not so much that a minor character came in and took over the book as that what was supposed to be a subplot came in and said, oh no, 2 plots, equal weight. Just, you know.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, but it's the same. It's the same phenomenon, just with
Yeah.
plot instead of character. So here's
point.
my thing on that, Erica. Okay, first of all, I need to know what your process is. Do you outline, or are you outlining on this one?
this was purely pants. I'm trying to outline a few chapters ahead.
Good. Here's my second question. How much do you trust your subconscious?
Oh, a lot. Hugely.
Good. You've given me all the right answers. What you do is you take this new subplot,
Yep.
you run with it, you let it go as far as it goes, and you trust your subconscious that it is going to tie itself back into the other plot in a way you cannot foresee, but will be really cool, and your readers will say, wow, you're really good at making plots.
Well, it has tied itself back in really nice ways. My problem is that in the meantime, I've got this problem with people stuck in New Hampshire and people stuck in Washington, D.C. It has turned into its own really nice storyline, and all the research can say, all this stuff. My problem is that I get started with the New Hampshire primary in New Hampshire. So we're in New Hampshire. And either I have to uproot my New Hampshire person into Washington, D.C., or I have to take the Washington, D.C. events and move them to New England somehow, or I have to do what my unconscious is telling me to do, and that is deal with the geographic divide. If I had access to a good old school editor, I would just do what my unconscious is telling me to do and throw it in like second draft form at a good editor. But I don't.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much what I was getting at. Is what I am telling you that I think that's the way to go.
Okay.
Just is trust your subconscious, let it run the show.
Yep.
And then, you fix either you fix it in revisions, or more likely there's going to be a lot less to fix than you think.
Okay.
Will, you were going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say pretty much what Steve is saying, I think, which is first draft and second draft are completely different things. The job of the first draft is simply to get to the end. The second draft is to figure out what you need in addition and what you didn't need. So it may turn out that in order to finish a story that ultimately ends up being about one of these two stories, you as the writer may have to write that second story and throw it out. I doubt that'll happen. My suspicion is that you'll write both of them. You'll find some little connections between them at the end that'll justify them, and you'll then be able to sit down and tell yourself how clever you were, and you will wonder why you were so terrified at the beginning. I think you've got to sort of embrace that idea of the second draft creator is going to have a different job than you've got now, and this is just not the time to worry about it.
Keeping in mind also that sometimes this method leads to 800 pages of manuscript and misery, basically.
Yes.
Not inevitably. Yeah, not inevitably. You've talked about some connections already between the two pieces of the story. If those connections are going throughout the book, then the reader can see the connections, and at the end, if you pull those stories together fairly tightly at the climax of the book, then the readers will be able to say, "Oh, that's where we were going all this time." And yeah, like these guys say, I don't know where they are on your screen, but for me, they're like over there and here. What you've got sounds like something that you're probably going to move pieces around in the second draft. I can see that being a really satisfactory,
a fun thing to do.
A cool arrangement for a story, a nice structure where you've got different geographical sections depending on the chapter and things like that.
Yeah.
So
this is integrated to the point. Oh, sorry.
The other thing to remember, Erica, is if Emma's right, and if you get to the end and you've got 800 pages and no story, then you never talk to us. We never advised you. And
Yes.
Erica, who?
Yeah.
Of course.
Thank you, Erica. Let's move on.
Good luck.
What?
Okay, we had Paul in there somewhere.
We're now moving on.
Yes.
To another
Hello.
Caller.
Oh, there you
Hello.
are. Hello, Paul.
Hi.
So my question is about links, story links, and markets. And I mostly tend to write in short stories, but this particular thing, I ended up having a novella length come out, and I can't really find a good list of markets for that length of story. So while I was in the process of looking, I decided I wanted to know what happened next, so I wrote a sequel. And I was wondering if it would be better just to mash them together and try to market it as a novel.
Yes.
Probably.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Short answers are good, right?
Well, you can sell novellas. Obviously, people do it all the time. Pretty much all of the web magazines and the Dead Tree magazines, they've all got like a slot for one novella per issue. But the problem is, of course, that you're competing with people like Michael Swanwick for that novella spot, or Lois Bujold or somebody, and there's only room for one novella spot. So it's harder to sell novellas.
There can be only one.
Yeah.
There can be only one, exactly, right. And don't ask where they put the sword. Sorry. Meanwhile, people who are writing short stories have an awful lot more spots that they can get their stories into, as you probably know, because all of those web magazines and paper magazines, they publish lots of short stories, but only the one novella. This is possibly a little different if you have knowledge of an anthology, say, that's looking for stories. They've got a little bit more room, but they usually have a theme that they want. And it may be that your story doesn't fit that theme. It may be that the anthologies are basically all invitational because editors can do that. And you don't know the editor, so you're trying to figure out, okay, how good a dinner do I have to buy them to get invited into this anthology? So yeah, if you've got the option to say, all right, I got some cool stuff in here. I've got the whole what happens next. I have other things that I haven't even started exploring with that story, with that world. I could definitely get a novel's length out of this. Then it's definitely worth trying.
And there you go.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Let someone else
Paul.
take it from here.
Okay. Anybody else having a question about a story? Have we run?
If you do have questions, go ahead, open up chat. Let me know in chat, because I finally found how to stop you guys from unmuting yourselves.
Somebody named Pat appears to have one.
Oh, and I would like to point out that Joe over in chat has posted a title of a markets, and where was that? Yes, Novel and Short Story Writers Market 2020. Thank you, Joe. These things are really good. They can go out of date really fast, but not that fast. It's still 2020, so go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, still being 2020 is a problem for me, but we won't go into that. Pat, I think, had something. Can we unmute Pat?
There we go.
Yes,
Can you hear
we
me?
can.
Yay, there's Pat. Hello, Pat.
Sorry about the barking dog. She just started.
Of course.
I've got the one that's maybe somewhat related to the last question on length. What if you got a story in your head, you wanted to get it out, but you are convinced that it will never go anywhere. It will never sell. It will just not make any markets. It's a wasted story. Do you get it out of your head and trunk it? Do you just get it out of your mind somehow without writing it?
Yes, you write it. You write it.
How do you
we're
waste
all
a story?
different. Yeah, we're all different, but I will point out that my first novel, Jarhead or whatever it's called, something like that, I was convinced that I was writing it purely for myself and a few friends. And now, of course, I had to convince myself of that in order to write it. So that was a deliberate head game I was playing. But the point still remains is that, whatever your motivation, you write the thing. And markets and that kind of stuff, that's a separate problem. If the story wants to be written, it wants to be written. And that's especially true today when there's so much self-publishing. Worst case, free download.
Yeah, and I teach writing. Hamlin University, it's great. I get like some of the smartest young writers I have ever seen show up there. It's great. But one of the things that I become increasingly convinced of, the more that I teach writing classes in university, is that learning to write is a long haul thing. You don't get it over the course of a term. You don't even get it over the course of 4 years or 6 years or however long the program is. You are always learning to write. And every story you write teaches you something new. When you're starting out, what you're learning is, oh, this is what the beginning of a story looks like. Oh, this is how I can tell when I've gotten to the end. Oh, this is how I can deal with that. Oh my God, there's that spot in the middle of where I can't figure out what's going on or nothing's happening and it's boring. How do I fix that? And the more you write, the more you have a sense of how a story feels, where you want to go with it, how to solve problems. And every time you write a complete work, you will learn a new thing. So there's no such thing as a wasted story.
Yeah,
if it never gets published, doesn't matter. It will have done things for you.
I agree with you. We've met, Emma. I've been doing this for 20 years. And unlike you folk, I'm starting to get old. So I'm just worried I don't have enough time to write the stories that I want to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, my roots give you the lie there, but that's, yeah. Yes, time isn't infinite for any of us, and yet you don't know until you write it. You really don't. If you're going at it with a feeling of this will never go anywhere, that may be useful. As Steve points out, sometimes you have to tell yourself, don't worry, this will never go anywhere. This is just a nutty experiment. Other times, that itself can be holding you back and causing you not to put your heart into it. And if you're writing something that you're not putting your heart into, man, that's just sad.
Yeah, that's when you say don't. Yeah. Emma's exactly right. And it reminds me, Phoenix Guards was also another one. And that one I was 100% convinced was never, and no one would ever buy that. I was just writing because I needed to read it.
Yes, that was completely wacko.
Yeah.
And I do remember the amazement and delight that you felt when somebody said, oh yeah, sure, we'll publish that.
Yeah.
And of course your entire writers group was going, they'll what?
They go, yeah, huh? This also reminds me of a great story, a Neil Gaiman story. He said that he finished a book, and I wish to hell I knew what book that was, because that'd make it better. But finished a book and was talking to Gene Wolfe and said, Gene, I figured out how to write a novel. And Gene said, oh, you poor boy. No, you figured out how to write that novel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks.
It was American Gods? Okay, yeah.
I say go for the one that you want to write. Because there's no guarantee you're going to sell. So if you write the thing that you think is commercial and it doesn't sell, you've failed on both levels. You've failed to achieve the commercial thing, and you've failed to do the interesting thing that's within you. This isn't to say that a commercial work can't be an interesting thing. If there's, that's sort of a side thing, but you set this up as being there is this thing that you would like to do that you think of as non-commercial. The entire genre of literary fiction is in theory the interesting stuff that's not commercial and therefore is extremely commercial. So I guess I'll just end with do it.
I think we're unanimous on that, which has got to be a first and a last. Do we have thank you very much, by the way. And do we have another question?
Yeah, we do have time for one more, I think.
Jen is surveying chat, deciding which of you is worthy.
Yeah, Joe asked a question about whiskey and writing. Let me explain that. Oh, James, okay, this will be quick. Then we'll go to James.
You sure it'll be quick?
Basically 3 whiskeys, and you can substitute for them. Okay, but fundamentally 3 whiskeys. There's Tullamore Dew, which is for a dram at the end of a day, at the end of a good day of work. Okay. Second, and Jameson works just as well. Next, there's Powers. Powers is for sitting there and having intense, long writing conversations that turn into collaborations. And fourth is there's Lagavulin, which is for celebrating the end of a book. So you finally got to the end, it's done, here's my Lagavulin. That's how whiskey works with writing. The end. Now we had an actual question. Let's go to that.
Okay, so for a few years, I was writing nothing but flash fiction because of work and school obligations. The problem is, now I'm finding out that I really don't have a lot of patience for writing longer works. How do you folks get past that, are we there yet, when writing longer stories or novels, instead of just taking the time to write what it's supposed to be and not just teleporting to the end of the tale?
You should have named the characters before we left the driveway. Okay, sorry.
What the short version of that answer, of that one, is you examine consequences.
Yeah, good short answer. For me, it's never been an issue because I think all of my friends would laugh hysterically if I said that I wanted to start writing flash fiction. Is it not true, my friends? Yeah. Oh, look, there's an opening for a short story. I think I'll write a novella and send it in. Every single editor.
And then Pamela will write flash fiction next.
Oh, yeah, that's going to happen. And every editor that I have ever sent a story to has said, well, it's longer than I said I wanted, but oh, okay. I mean, the ones who didn't like turn it down because it was too long. But yeah. I think what Steve is getting at is that you should look at the things that are under the story and the places that how to say this? Of course, oh, Steve walks away. I can't even ask Steve what he wanted to say. There are kinds of conflict that show up on the surface, and then there are kinds of conflict in the story that are lying kind of under the surface. And it's interesting and useful to look at the interplay between those when you think, okay, I want to make more of this, but I don't want just kind of pointless more of this.
Mm-hmm.
To find
Emma's exactly right. Yes.
You walked away. How do you know what I said?
Because I could hear you from over there. I was not walking away. I was getting more whiskey.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Will, what do you think? Does that make sense?
What I want to know is why you don't want to keep doing flash fiction. I think people do have fun links that are fun for them or natural for them. And I think that we over prioritize long works. I have enormous respect for a tight short story. I really admire people like Harlan Ellison who basically say, I'm not a novel writer, I'm a short story and novella writer. So my question is why do you want to write a novel?
Well, I mean, I'd like to start off with, short stories and novellas and sort of work my way up maybe. The thing is, I have written a novel in the past. I have written longer stories. It's just that I got into the habit of the flash fiction and I can't find my way back.
Well, my suggestion would be that to shoot for a sort of an in-between thing of maybe do some flash fiction or conventional length short stories that share something in common, a setting, some characters, do your equivalent of Sherlock Holmes, whatever the heck it is. Because if you're then,
Invisible Cities.
Yeah, because then you would end up with something that was really quite popular when I was young, which was the the kind of fake novel, that you saw it on the bookshelf and it didn't look like a collection of short stories because it really wasn't. Jack Vance's Dying Earth.
Sure.
That sort of thing where you just sort of thought of it as a thing of its own kind.
Yeah,
So-
and you can write a series of shorter pieces, but they've got the connection, the connective tissue between them that makes them something that you can, that they will look like a collection of short stories.
But they'll look like more than a collection.
Yes.
Just be a collection. There'll be there ought to be a name for it.
Braided mega novel?
I've heard.
No, not that name.
Not a braided mega novel?
Thematic anthology because it's a.
Well, I mean, like what
Anyway.
Zelazny did with Dilvish the Damned, threw a bunch of short stories together, and hey, it's a novel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
It's a place I can start. Thank you.
Hey, well, have fun with it.
The thing
luck.
to remember if you're going to do that is the thing that drives it, that carries through, which 90% of the time is going to be a character or a set of characters, have to be really strong.
Something at least has to be really strong and really memorable. It needn't necessarily, obviously I read a lot for the characters, and so I tend to come down on the side of I need to be interested in those characters, but it can be something, it can be a really compelling voice where you're not heavily invested in the characters. Maybe you're writing in omniscient third person, so you're never really deeply into those characters, but the voice is something that you say, yes, I want more of this. I want this style of writing. It can be
No one cares about voice, Emma.
Oh, shush. I'm telling Harvey on you, dude.
Yeah,
Or it can be a setting that is so rich and complicated and that the reader just wants to get to the next piece so that they can find out that, oh my God, that comment about the poisonous water horses, he wasn't kidding.
Yeah, the point being, whatever is the common thread running through it, whether that's character or the world or the voice or whatever, is what's got to be strong. The thing that's tying it together.
Yeah, I hate disagreeing with Emma, but I think it's got to be more than the voice because in theory, that's what they're coming to an author for anyway. It's I may be quibbling. I am quibbling here, but I
think there are works that have
a family story. What different stories about different members of the family, for example. Anyway, I'm sure you'll find something.
Okay, and is it John over there in chat who says POV strikes again? John!
Yeah.
POV solves everything.
Yes, it does. And is that are we at the end here?
No. Are we?
I'm afraid so. We are coming towards the end unless someone else has a last second question. We're towards the end. I want to thank everyone for coming on this rescheduled week. Anyone who doesn't know, all four of us live in South Minneapolis, and events were slightly interesting the last couple of weeks. You probably didn't hear about it.
And it's kind of nice to be able to do the show without getting we can have the windows open and not having the sound of the flashbangs and the tear gas grenades blowing up. So,
Yeah.
Well, there went another hour that you could have spent writing.
Yes.
Word Talk has been directed by Jen Phalian.
Recording engineer, Jennifer Slaw.
Produced by Jen the Mermaid Process in association
Princess.
Bad Reader. Produced by Jen the Mermaid Princess in association with Squirrel Co. Textbenders Incorporated.
Theme music was A Meaningful Dialogue, written by Neil Gaiman and performed by the Flash Girls.
Electrical design by Trippin' Breakers.
Camera control by Lori Solution.
Sound engineering by Whitey Say.
Website maintenance by Bugsy Feature.
The official Word Talk grammarian is ripping my hair out.
Wardrobe by Coates du Terre.
Voice coaching by Lucy Lipsenkopf.
Transcription by Ollie Slick.
Fact checking by Verity Mostly.
And our folklore consultant is Lily Levin.
Catering by Karen Feeding.
And Don't Read Like My Cousin.
Don't read like my cousin.
Don't read like my cousin.
This has been a Pilconesia production.